The night Elvis got fired from his first paying gig, he drove home crying and told his mama he was quitting music forever. What she said changed everything. It was a humid Saturday night in August 1954, and 19-year-old Elvis Presley was about to take the stage at the Bon Air Club in Memphis for his first ever paid performance. His hands were shaking as he tuned his guitar backstage, and his stomach was twisted into knots so tight he thought he might be sick. The Bon Air was a rough place, a honky-tonk bar on the outskirts of town, where working-class men came to drink cheap beer and listen to country music after long shifts at the factory. The crowd was mostly older, mostly male, and mostly interested in hearing the same kind of traditional country music they'd grown up with. Elvis was getting paid $15 for the night, more money than he'd ever earned for playing music. His manager at the time, a local DJ named Bob Neal, had pulled strings to get him this booking. "Just play it safe," Bob had told him. "Give them some country standards, don't do anything too crazy, and you'll be fine." But Elvis didn't know how to play it safe. He didn't know how to be anything other than himself. The club owner, a heavy-set man named Carl Tucker, found Elvis backstage and looked him up and down with obvious skepticism. Elvis was wearing a pink shirt with a black collar, his hair slicked back in his trademark style, a look that was completely out of place in this sawdust-floor country bar. "You're the kid Bob's been talking about?" Tucker asked, not hiding his doubt. "Yes, sir, Elvis Presley." "What kind of name is Elvis?" It's just my name, sir," Tucker grunted. "Well, Elvis, you've got 30 minutes. Try not to embarrass yourself." Elvis walked onto the small wooden stage and looked out at the crowd. About 50 people were scattered around the room, most of them not even paying attention to the stage. They were drinking, talking, playing pool in the back. Elvis was just background noise to them. He stepped up to the microphone, his guitar hanging around his neck, and said, "Good evening, folks. I'm Elvis Presley, and I'm going to play some music for you tonight." A few people glanced his way. Most didn't. Elvis started with "Blue Moon of Kentucky," a Bill Monroe song that he'd been working on with his own unique arrangement. Instead of playing it as a traditional bluegrass waltz, Elvis sped it up, added a rockabilly beat, and let his voice slide between notes in that distinctive way that would later become his signature. Within 30 seconds, the room had gone quiet, but not in a good way. People were staring at Elvis with confusion, some with disgust. This wasn't the country music they knew. This was something strange, something different, something that didn't fit into any category they understood. "What the hell is this?" someone shouted from the back. Elvis kept playing, trying to ignore the hostility he felt building in the room. He moved into the chorus, his body starting to sway with the rhythm the way it always did when he played. "Look at him wiggle," a man near the front laughed. "He looks like he's having a seizure." More laughter spread through the crowd. Elvis felt his face burning with humiliation, but he kept playing. He'd finish this song if it killed him. When the song ended, there was no applause, just silence. And then someone shouted, "Play some real music." Elvis tried to recover. "Thank you. This next one is called 'We Don't Want to Hear Any More of That Noise,'" another voice called out. "Play some Hank Williams or get off the stage." Elvis looked around desperately. The faces staring back at him ranged from confused to annoyed to actively hostile. These people didn't want what he was offering. They wanted the same thing they'd always heard, and Elvis was giving them something they couldn't even recognize. He tried to start another song, but his hands were shaking so badly he missed the first chord. The crowd laughed. Before Elvis could try again, Carl Tucker appeared at the side of the stage, his face red with anger. He made a cutting motion across his throat. "Get off." Elvis stopped playing and walked off stage, his eyes stinging with tears he refused to let fall. He'd been up there for maybe 12 minutes. Tucker met him behind the stage, fury in his eyes. "What the hell was that?" "I was just playing my music, sir." "That wasn't music, that was noise. You made a fool of yourself, and you made a fool of me for booking you." Tucker pulled a crumpled $10 bill from his pocket and shoved it at Elvis. "Here's $10. That's more than you deserve. Now get out of my club and don't ever come back." "But sir, I was supposed to get 15. "You were supposed to play music that doesn't make my customers want to leave. You're lucky I'm paying you anything." Tucker leaned in close, his breath smelling of whiskey. "Kid, let me give you some advice. Whatever you think you're doing with that wiggling and that strange singing, stop it. Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to see that. You're not an entertainer. You're a joke." Elvis took the $10 and walked out the back door of the Bon Air Club. He made it to his car before the tears started. He sat in the driver's seat, sobbing, feeling like his entire world had just collapsed. He'd been so sure that this was his chance. He'd practiced for hours, perfected his songs, believed that if people just heard him play, they'd understand. Instead, they'd laughed at him. They'd booed him. They'd called his music noise and his movements ridiculous. Maybe they were right. Maybe he was fooling himself. Maybe this dream of being a musician was just that, a dream that would never come true. Elvis drove home to the Presley apartment at Lauderdale Courts, still crying. It was after midnight when he walked through the door, but his mama Gladys was waiting up for him, the way she always did when he had a gig. She took one look at his face and knew something terrible had happened. "Baby, what's wrong? How did it go?" Elvis collapsed onto the couch, his head in his hands. "It's over, Mama. I'm done. I'm quitting music." Gladys sat down beside him and put her arm around his shoulders. "Tell me what happened." Through his tears, Elvis told her everything. The hostile crowd, the laughter, the boos, being pulled off stage after 12 minutes. Tucker calling his music noise and telling him he was a joke. "Mama, they hated me," Elvis said, his voice breaking. "They didn't just not like me, they hated me. They laughed at me like I was nothing, like I was stupid for even trying." Gladys listened without interrupting, letting her son pour out all his pain and humiliation. "I can't do this anymore," Elvis continued. "Every time I think I'm getting somewhere, something like this happens. Maybe everyone's right. Maybe I should just get a regular job and forget about music." Gladys was quiet for a long moment. Then she took Elvis's face in her hands and made him look at her. "Elvis Aaron Presley, you listen to me. You listening?" Elvis nodded, tears still streaming down his face. "Those people at that bar tonight, they didn't hate you. They were scared of you." Elvis looked at her like she was crazy. "Scared? They were laughing at me, Mama. Because they didn't understand what they were seeing. Baby, when something is truly new, truly different, people don't know how to react. They laugh because they're confused. They boo because they're uncomfortable. They get angry because you're showing them something that doesn't fit into their little boxes." Gladys wiped the tears from her son's cheeks. "You know what that means? It means you're doing something right. If you were just another country singer playing the same old songs the same old way, they would have clapped politely and forgotten you by tomorrow. But you shook them up. You made them feel something, even if that something was confusion." "But Mama, they told me I was a joke. They said nobody wants to hear my music." "They said nobody in that bar wants to hear your music," Gladys corrected. "But baby, that bar is not the world. Those 50 people drinking beer on a Saturday night are not everyone. Somewhere out there, there are people who are desperate to hear exactly what you're offering. You just haven't found them yet." Elvis shook his head. "How do you know that? How can you be so sure?" Gladys smiled. "Because I know what I hear when you sing. I hear something that's never existed before. Something that mixes up all the music you love into something brand new. And when something brand new comes along, there's always going to be people who reject it because it scares them. But there's also going to be people who embrace it because it's exactly what they've been waiting for." She took his hands in hers. "Baby, you have a choice right now. You can let one bad night at one bar with one group of people determine your whole future. Or you can decide that this is just one small bump on a long road." "What if it's not just one bump?" Elvis asked. "What if this keeps happening?" "Then it keeps happening until it doesn't. Thomas Edison failed 1,000 times before he invented the light bulb. Every great person who ever changed the world got laughed at by people who couldn't see what they were doing. That's not failure, Elvis. That's the price of doing something new." Gladys stood up and walked to the kitchen. She came back with a pen and a small piece of paper. "I want you to write down what that club owner said to you tonight. Every mean word. Every prediction about how you'd fail." Elvis looked at the paper reluctantly. "Why would I want to remember that?" "Because someday, when you're standing on a big stage in front of thousands of people who love your music, you're going to pull out that paper and remember this night. You're going to remember how they laughed at you and told you to give up. and it's going to remind you of how far you've come." Elvis took the pen and paper. With shaking hands, he wrote down what Carl Tucker had said. "You're not an entertainer. You're a joke. Nobody wants to hear that." Underneath, Gladys made him write the date and the name of the club. "Now," Gladys said, "I want you to make me a promise. Promise me you won't give up. Promise me you'll keep playing, keep singing, keep being exactly who you are. Not for me, for yourself. Because I know in my heart that if you quit now, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." Elvis looked at his mama, at the fierce belief in her eyes, and felt something shift inside him. The despair that had been crushing him began to lift, replaced by something else. Something like determination. "I promise, Mama, I won't give up." "That's my boy." Gladys kissed his forehead. "Now get some sleep. Tomorrow's a new day." Elvis kept that piece of paper in his wallet, right next to every other rejection and insult he collected over the years. It became part of his ritual. Every time someone told him he couldn't make it, he'd write it down and add it to his collection. 3 months after the Bon Air disaster, Elvis performed at the Eagles Nest Club in Memphis and tore the place apart. The crowd went crazy. Teenagers screamed and rushed the stage. It was the exact opposite of what had happened at the Bon Air. The difference? The Eagles Nest catered to a younger crowd. Kids who were hungry for something new, something different, something that spoke to their energy and rebellion. The same music that had made the Bon Air crowd laugh made the Eagles Nest crowd lose their minds with excitement. Gladys had been right. The Bon Air wasn't the world. Elvis just hadn't found his people yet. By 1956, Elvis was the biggest star in America. His music, which Carl Tucker had called noise, was dominating the charts. His movements, which the Bon Air crowd had mocked as seizures, were being imitated by teenagers across the country. Everything that had made him a joke at his first paying gig had made him a legend. In the summer of 1957, Elvis was back in Memphis for a concert. Before the show, he had his driver take him past the Bon Air Club. The place was still there, still serving cheap beer to working-class men, still booking country acts on Saturday nights. Elvis sat in his car looking at that building, remembering the worst night of his life. He pulled out his wallet and found the paper where he'd written Carl Tucker's words. "You're not an entertainer. You're a joke." He thought about going inside, finding Tucker, showing him how wrong he'd been. But then he realized something. He didn't need to prove anything to Carl Tucker. Tucker's opinion hadn't mattered then, and it certainly didn't matter now. The only thing that mattered was that Elvis hadn't quit. That night, Elvis performed for 18,000 screaming fans at the Memphis Fairgrounds. Before the show, he called his mama. "I drove by the Bon Air today," he told her. "Did you go inside?" "No, I just looked at it and remembered. And I wanted to thank you, Mama, for what you said that night. If you hadn't talked me out of quitting, I wouldn't be here right now." Gladys's voice was thick with emotion. "Baby, you would have made it anyway. You've got something special that won't stay hidden." "Maybe, but I might have given up before I found out. You kept me going when I wanted to stop. I'll never forget that." Elvis performed Blue Moon of Kentucky that night, the same song he'd been booed off stage for 3 years earlier. 18,000 people sang along to every word. The building shook with their energy. After the show, Elvis pulled out that worn piece of paper one more time. He read Tucker's words, smiled, and put it back in his wallet. He'd keep carrying it forever. Not as a wound, but as a reminder. A reminder that the people who laugh at you today might be watching you from the sidelines tomorrow. A reminder that one bad night doesn't determine your whole future. A reminder that the right audience is out there, even when the wrong one is booing. And most importantly, a reminder to never give up. Because somewhere, a mama is staying up late, ready to tell her broken child that the world is bigger than one bad night, and dreams are worth fighting for, even when everyone is laughing. If this story of devastating failure and determined comeback moved you, make sure to subscribe and share this video. Let us know in the comments if you've ever wanted to quit something after a terrible experience. Sometimes the night you want to give up is the night before everything changes.